Live from London, this is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. I'm Lizzie Burden with your top stories. Stocks extend gains with tech leading Asian markets into the green. SK Hynix making its Nasdaq debut today, confirmed as the biggest ever US listing by a foreign company. Truce in limbo. A US official tells Bloomberg that technical talks are continuing with Iran, even after both sides traded fresh rounds of strikes. And Europe's biggest car maker looks to slash up to half its model lineup, but management at Volkswagen fails to agree on deeper job cuts. Well, those are your headlines this morning. Welcome to Friday. Here is the picture in markets. As I say, Asian stocks powering ahead this morning, up 1.4%. Investors piling back into chips on the renewed optimism over AI demand. Futures pretty flat on both sides of the Atlantic, just in the red, although we are looking through the geopolitics now and waiting for earnings season to affirm that AI optimism. Now flip over to the cross-asset picture. Here's where it gets tasty. You've got oil steady after a volatile week. The US and Iran, according to the US side at least, agreeing to keep talking despite the strikes both ways. But take a look at what's happening in Japan. We've got the yen strengthening from multi-decade lows, now trading at 161 per dollar on Japan, urging its pension funds to invest more at home, and yields down on the 10-year JGB as well. You're looking at it currently down 10 basis points at 277. So that's the markets for you. Let's take a look at the agenda for today. From 7 a.m. London time, we'll get a raft of inflation prints from across Europe. These are the final prints for June. Then at 9 a.m. we get the IEA oil market report, of course, in particular focus given the geopolitics. And then today is the day when SK Hynix starts trading in New York. It's set to be the biggest ever first-time share sale in the US by a foreign company, knocking Alibaba off the top spot, and the Kospi already lifted this morning on the back of the listing sentiment. The Kospi up 4.5%. So plenty to get through. Let's set you up for the day ahead. Well, happy Friday, everybody. We end the week with stocks in Asia on a positive note on renewed optimism over AI demand. We're also seeing a boost to the yen. Let's go straight to Winnie Xu in Hong Kong. Winnie, talk us through what's happening where you are.
Yeah, good morning, Lizzie. What a really nice way to wrap up our week in Asia after a very volatile week. We have the MSCI Asia here up 1.5%. In fact, having its best day in about a week. Now, the gains are mainly being boosted by the technology shares after Micron's spending plan really reassured investors that the AI demand remains solid. And here you can see that Kospi here still leading gains up almost 5% ahead of SK Hynix's US listing. But also, we are seeing some strength coming through for the Hong Kong market as well. Hang Seng Index up 1.6%, also headed for its best week in more than a year after being one of the worst performers globally so far this year. So you're seeing investors finding some more value in some of these shares. Now, flip the board, we take a closer look at the tech stocks because front and center, we have SK Hynix having its US debut later today. Right now, having raised $26.5 billion US dollars, which, as I just mentioned, is going to make it the world's biggest US listing by a foreign company, but also the world's third biggest listing in history. So lots of excitement here. We are looking at the listing at about 3% premium against the Thursday close in Korea, but investors will be closely watching out how that premium evolves after the trading starts, as it's going to give a good gauge of where the where investor sentiment when it comes to the AI trade is. Also, similarly, we are seeing gains in Japanese tech as well as a Chinese chipmaker. Here, Hua Hong Semiconductor up about 5%. Some optimism coming through ahead of China's memory chipmaker giant CXMT's listing IPO next week, and that is likely going to become the biggest mainland listing so far this year. here. Now, flip the board, we take a quick look at Japanese assets. We are seeing that triple rally across assets. Japanese stocks extending gains with the yen strengthening and also bonds rallying after the comments from Finance Minister to urge pension funds, including GPIF, to invest further in the domestic market. Back to you, Lizzie.
Okay, Winnie, thank you so much. Two big themes to pick up on there, tech and the Japanese story. Let's start with tech. SK Hynix raising, as Winnie says, $26.5 billion in its ADR offering as the chipmaker powered through volatility to deliver the largest ever US first-time share sale by a foreign company. We can go straight to Seoul now. Our bureau editor, Denny Thomas, joins us now. Denny, what does that tell us about investor appetite for the AI trade right now? A confident start here, $149 per ADR, more than 3% above yesterday's closing price in Seoul. Confident, to say the least.
Yeah, so I think the premium and the fact that the book build generated more than 200 billion worth of demand clearly indicates there is a lot of interest, global interest in the tech sector, and the two chip stocks in Korea are, as we know, the foundation for the whole AI investment build out. And so I think this coming at a time when there's a lot of investor angst about whether this rally will continue. The fact that SK was able to raise this kind of money at a premium is a strong point. Also, fundamentally, if you look at the earnings of these companies, they've been generating a lot of cash and profit. Samsung this week reported 19-fold increase in their operating income, and which was more than 50% more than what the previous quarter generated. So fundamentally, it's a strong story, but the huge run-up makes investors a bit nervous. But what we've seen by the listing and by the fundraising by SK is that there is still ample demand for this sector to keep growing.
So is this going to reopen a meaningful pipeline of Asian listings into the US, Danny?
I mean, that's the big question mark. It's not clear which other sector can lead. Right now, there's a lot of demand for the tech industry, but we don't have many meaningful companies left. Samsung is a big name here, but we haven't heard any kind of discussion around whether they want to do forward with what kind of an ADR listing. But definitely this listing and how it trades once it start trading on Nasdaq and how it does over the coming weeks and months might set the tone for others to consider, because it definitely narrows the discount that some of the Korean companies have had traded for. And if SK can show that this is a win-win for them and investors, it might open the floodgates. But right now, we're not hearing any more conversations around any big listings into US from Asia at least.
Okay, Denny Thomas, thank you so much for that update. Well, Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow will be speaking with the SK Hynix chairman at 3:30 p.m. London time, so don't miss that interview. Turning to the second theme in Asian markets, though, Japanese bonds and the yen have rebounded from multi-year lows after the finance minister called for Japanese pension funds to invest more in domestic assets. Let's get more now from our Bloomberg MLive strategist, David Savage. David, what's the thinking behind this call, and how are they going to make it happen?
Hi, Lizzie. I think it shows that the government is aware that the bond market was increasingly, uncomfortable and concerned that the Bank of Japan was behind the curve as it pertained to inflation risks. And that was really underscored earlier today, where we saw a 7.1% print, PPI print. And that seemed to spook the bond market a little bit. We saw JGB futures give up earlier gains. And then these comments from Finance Minister Katayama really helped the yen and of course helped particularly long end bond yields. And so I think a lot of it is certainly positioning. I think at a certain point, just given the sheer size of GPIF and the whole institutional universe, it means that traders certainly started unwinding some of the shorts they had, but certainly it had helped long end bond yields, which had moved a long way in the last couple of weeks. So we saw the 10-year come off, 10-year bond yield drop about 10 basis points, a pretty significant move. But obviously it comes after weeks of bond selling and persistent weakness in the yen.
Well, so given that the Government Pension Investment Fund, the GPIF, owns trillions of overseas dollars, what's the consequence going to be internationally? I'm thinking particularly about treasuries, which I think make up just over half of its foreign bonds.
Yeah, I mean, if we saw that move, it certainly puts more pressure on treasuries and would support yen assets. So the yen and JGBs. And I think in the near term, positioning might start to move in that direction. That you might have this become a more present risk, and therefore you might see that support, particularly long end bond yields in Japan. But it remains unclear as to whether one, the pension funds are actually moving in that direction, and two, how long it might take to actually start to see that. But I think in the near term, you might start to see positioning sort of front run that actuality.
Okay. David, thank you for the update. That's Bloomberg MLive strategist David Savage. As we see the Nikkei, the yen and JGBs lifted off the back of this news. We're still ahead. Models to be reduced, but no deal on VW job cuts. We'll discuss the restructuring impasse at Europe's biggest car maker. But first, to the geopolitics. The US-Iran truce in limbo after days of strikes. We'll look at what could come next. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, 6:13 a.m. here in London. Well, the truce between the US and Iran is in limbo after a two-day exchange of airstrikes and the reimposition of US oil sanctions. One US official has told Bloomberg that the technical talks are continuing between the two sides, and the US is committed, nonetheless, to finding a resolution. For more, let's bring in Abir Abu Omar, who is Bloomberg's Horizons Middle East and Africa anchor. Abir, good morning. What are the prospects for peace talks, given the strikes and the rhetoric that we've seen in recent days?
Good morning, Lizzie. Yeah, look, you're seeing the same thing that we've been seeing play out over the past few weeks. Now we're hearing from a U.S. official. This is Bloomberg reporting that a U.S. official telling us that the technical talks between Iran and the United States are set to continue happening. Now, we don't have a time frame. We don't have clarity on where they would take place. But overall, the narrative repaints itself, really. And it looks like we're going back to the state of back and forth with the U.S., namely President Trump coming out with these really strong remarks, similar to what he has said at the NATO summit in Ankara a couple of days ago, that the ceasefire talks, according to him, or as far as he's concerned, are over, but that the negotiators, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, can go back to having these technical talks with the Iranian side. So we've seen 2 days of straight attacks by the United States in Iran, killing over a dozen people and injuring dozens others, and then Iran saying that it will strike back. At the heart of all of this, obviously, remains the Strait of Hormuz, and it looks like it has taken the edge of President Trump's main goal in this entire MOU, Lizzie, and that is the nuclear component. We haven't really heard of much progress in the nuclear component or the element of that in the MOU. What we've been hearing a lot about is the Strait of Hormuz, assets, the frozen assets, and the oil sanctions that the Treasury Department in the United States has waived or revoked that waiver for Iran. So we've been hearing a lot about that, not much about the nuclear component. So when we go back to those discussions, it'll be interesting to see just what exactly is being discussed.
Yeah, that's the diplomacy. Interesting that you've got Brent there at $76 a barrel, even though we're hearing that traffic in the Strait, as you say, was pretty much at a standstill yesterday.
Yeah, it was at a standstill, and our energy teams reporting this morning that the ships that have the light on, as you would say, are nearly vanished. They're not there. We might have some movement in ships that have turned off their lights and are going through the waterway. But for the time being, we're not seeing a lot of optimism in the Strait of Hormuz. We're seeing ship movement continuing at a near standstill. We're hearing that Qatar, Lizzie, if you remember, it came out 3 weeks ago or so and said that it will ramp up its LNG production in one of the facilities that was damaged during the war. It will ramp up fixing that facility. And now Qatar yesterday saying that it will pause that ramping up, because if you remember, I mean, the way this whole thing started was with Iran attacking an LNG-laden ship flagged to Qatar at the beginning of this week. And so you're not seeing a lot of signs of optimism. But when it comes to the oil market and the reaction by traders, it was instant when President Trump made those remarks. But we seem to have steadied since then. We seem to have Brent prices calm down a little bit, just because the market seems to understand that this state of back and forth will continue to be the case, with the MOU discussions unraveling every now and then, but never really collapsing altogether.
Okay, Abir, thank you so much for the update. That's Abir Abu Omar, Bloomberg Horizons Middle East and Africa anchor. Well, turning to the US now, and Federal Reserve Chairman Kevin Warsh has announced the leadership of 5 task forces that will examine the central bank's approach to key aspects of policy making. They include former central bankers, academics and corporate executives as well. We can go to Bloomberg's Jill Desis for more on this now. Jill, good morning. What more do we know about these task force lineups? I see former Bank of England Governor Mervyn King as one of the names on the list.
Yes, that's right, Lizzie. I mean, this is really a pretty significant list of heavy hitters here. As you mentioned, Mervyn King overseeing the BOE during the global financial crisis. You also have former heads of central banks from Brazil, from India. So I do think in terms of, sort of that knowledge there, it's quite interesting. As you mentioned, some academics as well as several executives. You've got Mark Andreessen is on the list, Andreessen Horowitz, and then also Asha Sharma. She's the fairly new Xbox CEO at Microsoft. In a previous life, she oversaw Microsoft's core AI product. So when you look at some of the task force initiatives that these people are supposed to be looking at, in addition to sort of examining the Fed's balance sheet, you've also got some various questions around productivity, AI usage, that kind of thing. So again, you're seeing a few more names on your screen right now, taking a look at really a lot of fairly significant names across a number of different businesses.
OK, so a list of heavy hitters. How soon could we see their findings changing the way the Fed operates?
Yeah, so I think, at this point, Lizzie, you've got, Kevin Warsh, who, when he came in, has been tasked with essentially, what he calls a regime change. These task forces are supposed to present their findings by the end of the year. So you could see something, once those initiatives are actually, filed, maybe you're looking at next year that you could potentially look at things that are in place. I do want to point out, one expert that we talked to does mention that the Fed already has an army of PhDs looking at a lot of these types of issues. I mean, questions over the size of the Fed's balance sheet, questions over productivity. I mean, these aren't necessarily new issues. And so I think, there's significant challenges that you would presume a lot of these task force members have to face in terms of finding, some new solutions to how exactly the Fed operates. But obviously, you've got Kevin Warsh, who, again, is, really, really sort of interested in trying to find, new and different ways, bringing in those different regimes. So I think when you're bringing in these outside voices, it'll be kind of interesting to see what they ultimately come up with.
Is there precedent for anything like this at the Fed, Jill?
Well, look, I think that at this point, you've had, instances in the past, perhaps, but in terms of the scale of this sort of initiative, I think that's what makes it quite interesting, right? So you've got, again, this army of names, and we've just talked about a few of these people that are kind of coming in. So I think that that's what makes this, sort of different. But, there's all sorts of unprecedented things that are happening across, government of the United States right now, as you go. So we'll have to see, again, ultimately what they sort of come up with in this report by the end of the year.
All right, Jill Desis there. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. And coming up on Daybreak Europe, how young people are investing more and taking bigger risks. We'll take you to the details next. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. Now, with home ownership out of reach for many young people and AI reducing their job prospects, many are turning to investing in the hope of securing their future. But with index funds seen as too slow an investment, more young investors are putting their money into meme stocks and options and crypto. Bloomberg Originals has been looking at why they're prepared to take on so much risk.
There are many types of risk. And now, even trading is an extreme sport.
In this video, I will start with risking only $100 per trade.
Bro, it's simple. If you can scroll TikTok, you can trade.
You have the fear of missing out on a trade.
And judging by social media, everyone is getting rich.
We're at $232,000.
Just today, I made $16,000.
More young people are investing than ever before. And they're learning about markets in a way no generation has.
Gen Z really is distinct from other age groups. If you go on social media now, you will see a lot of sophisticated trading techniques used in ways that I think no one would have imagined a 20-year-old in 1990, 2000, or even 2010 doing or even knowing about.
I want to show you this trade I'm taking.
A lot of that activity has also broadened to sports gambling, for instance, or trading on prediction markets.
But there are worries that these investors are over-leveraged, taking one too many risks.
I've always been a big risk taker. It's kind of just part of who I am.
3, 2, 1, to the moon! Holy Well, you know what?
Gen Z has a highly differentiated view of risk.
They don't drive, they don't date, they don't drink. On the other hand, they're also this extremely risk-taking generation.
And for many, it's the only path they see to getting ahead.
YOLO stands for you only live once. So YOLO bets would refer to risky investments where the trader has an attitude of, you go big or you go home.
And subscribers could watch that full documentary right now on the terminal and at Bloomberg.com. And next week, Bloomberg is also hosting a webinar on the new wealth playbook, exploring alternatives and the next-gen client. So do scan the QR code on your screen to register and to take part in the audience Q&A. So that'll be from 3 p.m. London time next Tuesday. Now to some other top stories we're following this morning. Meta has unveiled the latest version of its most advanced AI model, Muse Spark 1.1. The update includes a new paid tier for developers, marking the first time Meta has charged businesses for access. CEO Mark Zuckerberg told Bloomberg that the new model has state-of-the-art, or very close to it, agentic reasoning, and pricing will be, quote, very aggressive and attractive. Elsewhere in tech, S&P Global has downgraded Oracle's rating to BBB-, one level above junk, citing the company's growing spending on AI. The agency says Oracle's rapidly expanding infrastructure business is increasing its overall credit risk. It expects Oracle to burn through $42 billion of cash in fiscal 2027, up from its prior forecast of $24 billion. Well, that's your latest in tech. Just checking in again on these markets. In the equities and futures picture, Asia powering ahead on that AI demand. Futures a little more cautious on both sides of the Atlantic. But let me just take you to what's happening in Japan, because some real outsized moves here off those comments from the Japanese foreign minister calling on pension funds to invest more in domestic assets. It's boosting the Nikkei 1.5%, the yen as well, up from multi-decade lows, and you're also seeing a lift to JGBs, so yields down about 10 basis points on the 10-year at 277. But coming up, a reduction in car models, but deadlock over job cuts when it comes to the VW restructuring. We'll get you all the details next. This is Bloomberg. Live from London, this is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. I'm Lizzie Burden with your top stories. Stocks extend gains with tech leading Asian markets into the green. SK Hynix makes its Nasdaq debut today, confirmed as the biggest ever US listing by a foreign company. Meanwhile, Truce in limbo. A US official tells Bloomberg that technical talks are continuing with Iran even after both sides traded fresh rounds of strikes. And Europe's biggest car maker looks to slash up to half its model lineup, but management at Volkswagen fails to agree on deeper job cuts. Those are your headlines this morning. Welcome to the programme if you are just joining us, 6:30 a.m. here in London. Happy Friday. It has been a volatile week in markets, both for tech and off the geopolitics. But we end it with Asian stocks powering ahead, up 1.3% on the MSCI Pacific Index. A little more cautious on both sides of the Atlantic. We have Euro Stoxx 50 futures down 0.2%. But flip the board cross asset and you can see, yes, oil is higher at $76 a barrel, but it's only 76 for Brent. We've got the US and Iran, as we were hearing from Abir Abu Omar, agreeing to keep talking despite the strikes both ways. Meanwhile, real action happening in Japan. This off the back of the call to pension funds to invest more at home. So the yen strengthening off the back of multi-decade lows. 161 per dollar is where we trade right now. The yield on 10-year JGBs down now 9 basis points at 278. You've also seen a boost to the Nikkei. It will be interesting to see just how much of the government pension investment fund repatriates, given its sizable holdings of treasuries and other foreign assets. So that's what's happening in your markets. Let's flip over to the front pages now. We'll kick off with the Financial Times. It leads with a report on OpenAI and Google selling AI models to Chinese tech giants blacklisted by the Pentagon. Although the sales are legal, the paper says that they have reignited calls for tighter US curbs on models. Flipping over to the Wall Street Journal now, it focuses on details of President Trump's trading and how an automated investing strategy in his Charles Schwab account triggered a wave of activity after the president secured a court ruling throwing out a $500 million penalty against him after a case brought by New York State. And if we end on Le Monde out of France, all focus on the football after the country's team became the first to qualify for the World Cup semi-final with a 2-0 victory over Morocco, which the newspaper puts down to their blazing attack. Well, we've got a big weekend of football coming up, but in the meantime, you can get a roundup of all the stories you need to know to get your day going in today's edition of Daybreak, which terminal subscribers can find by going to D8YB Go. Well, turning back to the automotive sector, and Volkswagen has announced plans that it's going to cut its model lineup by as much as 50%. The move is part of a savings plan announced after a supervisory board meeting that stopped short of agreeing on deeper workforce reductions. Let's go now to Elizabeth Berman, our European Autos editor, for more. Morning, Elizabeth. Just talk us through what was agreed by the board.
Well, that will be a very short answer because they didn't really settle on anything. You just mentioned this push to reduce the model lineup by half, which will really cut back on complexity, which is also slowing down the company. However, the release that we got yesterday didn't mention any of the big plans that had made such waves, specifically the plan to double job cuts to 100,000 and close as many as 4 plants in Germany. Instead, they focused on a plan that was pretty long on ideals and short on specifics, is one reaction that I saw early this morning. But this is very much the starting gun, I would say, for further talks on how to bring costs down, make VW more nimble, and also crucially catch up to the competition. But it's fair to say that there was a little bit of a sense of a disjointment between what had gone on in the days before and what we saw last night from VW.
Yeah, because that competition from China is real and rising. You've got the price pressure. So ongoing discussions within the board with the unions. What are the chances of a deal on further cuts?
I'm fairly sure they will agree on something. They will settle on something, the shape of which we got very little indication for last night. It was pretty interesting that the Works Council head was sort of pointing to talks starting after the summer break. So despite all the bravado, beside all the pushback, they're pretty focused on summer break, it seems, rather than holding more talks. There will be more news trickling out today, a bit more the specifics around what will come next. But in terms of what they're targeting at this point, we're pretty much in the dark on further details. But yes, they will be going for more job reductions, more capacity reductions. But where we stand on closing plants, for example, in Germany, is very hard to say.
Well, as we head towards the European cash open, Elizabeth, what's the sentiment then for broader autos, given this sense of indecision or lack of a conclusion, shall we say, from this meeting?
Yeah, so for VW specifically, I think the share price reaction may be a negative to muted because the market had been hoping for a little more. However, in the days before, we had been reporting as well that real change at this particular board meeting was fairly unlikely. But I think it's fair to say that VW also undershot that low expectation. So in terms of what this means for the broader sector today, VW is a very specific case, as we've discussed on previous occasions. It's very hard to get reform through, but the cost-cutting issues, the cost-cutting drive that's weighing on all these companies is significant. I might point to Stellantis for a comparison. They've really accelerated on the downside despite putting in place vast changes back a few weeks. So the market there is also really worried about where the operations, where the sales, where the marketing is heading over the next years or so, particularly in Europe.
Okay, Elizabeth, thanks so much. We'll look ahead to the start of the trade on Volkswagen in a couple of hours. For now, Elizabeth Berman, thank you so much. Well, now we look to some other top stories that we're following for you this morning, beginning with Andy Burnham here in the UK and his path to becoming the next Prime Minister looking almost certain after 322 of Labour's 403 MPs nominated him to replace Keir Starmer as party leader. Burnham said he was deeply grateful for the support, saying that it reflected a shared belief that Britain needs a new approach to politics. He said the circuit breaker he's offering means shifting power out of Westminster and rewiring the economy for ordinary people. Elsewhere, Taiwan has suspended stock trading and closed schools as Typhoon Barbie approaches the island. The storm is expected to dump heavy rain over a vast area and could lead to extensive flooding, even though it isn't expected to cross Taiwan's coast. Barbie is then forecast to move towards China's east coast, where heavy rainfall is expected across several provinces through the weekend. And Goldman Sachs has tightened its personal trading rules, restricting employees from betting on a range of prediction market contracts. The updated policy covers wagers tied to company-specific events, regulatory approvals, global conflicts, and even the future price of Bitcoin. Employees who violate the policy could face penalties ranging from forfeiture of profits to being fired. And Bloomberg understands that Spain's push to expand joint EU debt issuance has been met with scepticism from some of the bloc's top economies. Sources say that Germany and France were among those who questioned the proposal at yesterday's Eurogroup group meeting in Brussels. Nations have been discussing how to strengthen the euro's role as a reserve currency, but many are reluctant about EU bonds because of concerns over fiscal discipline. We'll be speaking with the Spanish Minister for Economy and Trade later on, so don't miss that exclusive conversation at 9:30 a.m. London time. Now, AI pioneer Yann LeCun says that he believes Europe has missed the boat in the race to develop LLMs. LeCun was Meta's chief AI scientist, but left the company to launch his own company, AMI Labs. And he's been speaking to Bloomberg's Tom McKenzie at the RAISE summit in Paris, where he challenged the way generative AI models are being developed.
Most of the details in the world, in the physical world, are not predictable. And so the very idea of a generative model does not work in the real world. It's relatively easy to predict the word that follows a sequence of words, which is really what LLMs are doing, whether it's natural language or code or whatever, right? You show the system a long sequence of words and you train it to predict the next word. It can never exactly predict the word that follows, but it can produce a score for every possible words in your dictionary or a probability distribution, right? So then you pick a word from that probability distribution That's the word the system is going to produce. You shift that into the input, and now you can produce the second word, shift that into the input, third word. That's called autoregressive prediction. It's a very old idea, and that's what LLMs are based on. If you want LLMs to reason a little bit, you have it produce lots and lots of those sequences, and then you have another neural net that selects the best answer among all of the ones that are produced, which is ridiculously expensive. But this is how those, coding, mathematics kind of system work, more or less. Now, if you want a system to understand the real world, why not use the same technique? Take a piece of video and train the system to predict what's going to happen next in the video. And if you train the system to predict at the pixel level, it simply doesn't work. Because most of the details in video are not predictable. Most of the information contained in video is entirely unpredictable. If I take a video of this room, I point the camera on this side, I slowly rotate the camera, I stop here, and I ask a system, fill in the blanks, tell me what's going to happen next in that video. Probably going to predict the camera is going to continue rotating. There's absolutely no way it can predict what every one of you looks like. There's just no information from which that it can use to make that kind of prediction. So if you train a system to make that prediction at the pixel level, you kill it, because you basically are asking it to solve a task that is completely unsolvable. Now, of course, you're going to say, but wait, we have systems that can do video generation. Yes, they can, but they're going to make a prediction that is false. They're not going to predict what you look like. They're just going to put random people there, right? And those systems don't really construct a good understanding of the underlying physics or reality of that. So the technique we've been working on for a number of years, while I was at FAIR, and since we created AMI Labs, is called JEPA. And it consists in training a system not to generate and predict all the details of a signal, but to construct or learn an abstract representation of that signal, of a video, and then to make predictions in that abstract representation space.
So that was Yann LeCun, Executive Chairman of AMI Labs, speaking to Tom McKenzie at the RAISE Summit in Paris. Well, coming up, staying with tech, on the day that SK Hynix makes its US debut, we'll take a look inside the secretive Chinese chip maker that's set to shake up the trillion-dollar memory chip market. That story next. This is Bloomberg.
We see tremendous opportunity in Europe. I think both the regulatory environment, the cost of power, and there's an excitement around building data centers. And so it was a no-brainer for us. I think we'll get it all 200 on before 2 years, maybe 18 months. I think some of it will come online in 2026, and most of it will come online in 2027. I think there's tremendous opportunity here.
The Cerebras CEO Andrew Feldman speaking also to Bloomberg's Tom McKenzie. Well, as China ramps up its focus on tech self-reliance, the spotlight is growing on its homegrown chip makers. One such company, CXMT, is launching China's biggest IPO this year as it seeks to double output. Now, the secretive company is the focus of today's Bloomberg Big Take. And for more, we can join our technology reporter, Gao Yuan. Gao, really good morning to you. Thanks for bringing us this story. For anyone unfamiliar with CXMT in our international audience, what do we know about it, and how much of a threat is it to the likes of Samsung and SK Hynix coming out of Korea?
Hey, good morning. Yes, CXMT, many people would never heard of this name before this year. It is a memory chip maker in China. What it does is DRAMs, and now we heard they are potentially doing HBMs, and the way they're doing it is with help of three other companies that are helping them with the chip design, chip manufacturing, testing, and packaging. So basically, they have set up an entire supply chain for them to do that. The importance for CXMT is that, as you know, the worldwide memory chip shortage is biting in lots of tech companies, and the fact that China is having someone to help it with this memory chip supply is going to help Chinese companies, especially AI companies in the future, to expand its capacity in terms of AI computing power and storage power, so that one day they hope that Chinese AI industry can thrive from this all homegrown supply chain.
Well, yeah, how big is the global potential for this company? It's interesting that Apple has shown interest.
Yeah, if you talk about the comparison with Samsung and Hynix, it's not there yet. But what we heard is that they are quickly expanding their factories in China, in Shanghai specifically, and we had analysts saying it's expanding at China speed, which really would indicate that it's really growing fast and rapidly in terms of capacity expansion. In hope they can catch the shortage cycle this time and expand and get profit from them.
So I mentioned that this is China's biggest IPO this year. What did we learn from the IPO filing? I said it was a secretive company. What came out in the wash when it went public?
Yeah, unfortunately, the filing didn't unveil too much secrets, but what we know is that they are raising about $4.3 billion US. And the money will be spent on, advancing R&D in DRAM and also expanding capacity. So that's all we know. But the importance for this company is that, in China is trying to build an entire full stack supply chain for AI, basically homemade models, home-developed models, home-developed chips, home-developed servers and data centers. What's the CX team's importance is that the company is critically, is a critical supplier of DRAM and HBMs in China, so that if China wants a full-stack homegrown capacity to help its own expansion, CX team is irreplaceable.
Gao, thank you so much for bringing us this story. That's our Bloomberg technology reporter, Gao Yuan. And of course, you can find today's big take on the terminal and at Bloomberg.com. Now to some other top corporate news this morning. Former Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke has been appointed to Anthropic's Long-Term Benefit Trust. It's a governance body designed to safeguard the startup's public interest mission, advising management on decisions around AI risks and impacts. Bernanke and 3 fellow trustees hold no financial stake in the company, but will have the power to appoint and remove board members. Elsewhere in tech, Netflix shares slipped in late trading after the Wall Street Journal reported that the company's battling declining subscriber engagement. The report says it's exploring the addition of live TV channels and bundled subscriptions with other streaming services. Netflix is also said to be discussing bids for the next 2 FIFA World Cups. And US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has called on Samsung and SK Hynix to expand chip production in the US. Speaking at an event hosted by Micron Technology, Lutnick confirmed that he's in talks with the South Korean memory producers, but didn't offer specifics. His comments came a day before SK Hynix ADRs make their trading debut in New York. Now, SpaceX has shown the might of American space technology and financial muscle with its record-breaking IPO. And on today's episode of Bloomberg Tech Europe, Tom McKenzie looks at where Europe is behind in the space race and how it can secure space autonomy going forward. The man who oversees Europe's space agenda is Josef Aspacher, the Director General of the European Space Agency. He acknowledges that while the US is an important partner, Europe needs to do much more as it pursues greater autonomy in the field.
We see now, of course, with the IPO of SpaceX that the support of NASA and the Space Force really leads to world-dominating space companies. And this is something, of course, where volume is just as important as excellence.
And you can catch the full episode at 8:30 a.m. London time right here on Bloomberg TV. Plenty more coming up on Daybreak Europe, though. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg.
artificial intelligence is the technology that will shape competitiveness and economic power in the 21st century. Europe must create the right conditions, mobilize the necessary capital, and enable its companies to achieve the scale to compete globally so that the next generation of global AI champions is born, grows, and remains here in Europe.
The Eurogroup President Kyriakos Periakakis yesterday. Well, it was tech stocks that saved the tape through the geopolitical uncertainty yesterday. A sharp rotation into semis, really defining the Wall Street session to absorb the macro shocks that normally, historically, would have undermined the broader index. So breadth giving back, but still holding the edge, as you can see here. Flip the board over, though, and one other big piece of big tech news over the past 24 hours that we've been discussing on the programme is this Bloomberg scoop that Meta is considering whether some of its AI infrastructure could be more valuable if rented to outsiders. Think about SpaceX renting access to its Memphis data centres to Anthropic. And you can see here Meta could do with a boost, couldn't it? It's been lagging the rest of the S&P, the Mag 7 in 2026 so far. Just finally, of course, the big milestone today is going to be SK Hynix's US listing, the biggest foreign debut in Wall Street's history. And part of the appeal is surely a way of escaping some of the volatility that we've seen in Korea on the Kospi. So it'll be interesting to see how much retail participation it attracts. But what you can see here is actually Micron, listed in the US, has been more whippy than SK Hynix over the past month. So let's see how it all plays out when SK Hynix lands in the US. Well, to access all these charts, go to CHRT TV Go on your terminal. It's all the charts we've used throughout the day on Daybreak, but also across Bloomberg TV through the programmes. And just a quick look at the risk events on the docket for today. From the top of the next hour, we'll get the final June inflation prints across Europe. We'll also have the IEA report on oil for given the geopolitics very much in focus. And as I say, SK Hynix ADRs beginning trading as well. We'll also have an interview with the chairman of SK Group as those ADRs start trading at 3:30 p.m. London time. This is Bloomberg.